I'm Guy Garvey, I'm in Manchester. I'm talking to the Peter Gabriel in situ at Real World Studios in the big room there. I wish I was there as always. I've spent an awful lot of time at your place, as you know, and I do find it very inspiring.
Great, well, we appreciate it.
Ah, lovely man. I heard New Blood this morning. Congratulations, mate. It's a beautiful record.
Thanks very much.
It's got lots and lots of old memories for me because I've always been a huge fan of your music, as you know. How do you begin to reimagine your songs for an orchestra? I mean, first of all, how did the project come about in the first place?
Well, it sort of fell off the back of the Scratch My Back project, which, as you know, because you did one of the exchanges, but it was the sort of, you do one of my songs, I'll do one of your songs project. And when I was thinking of how to do it, I was thinking about homemade instruments at one point, and then I thought, actually, I might try some real acoustic instruments where people have spent a few hundred years trying to get them to be incredibly expressive. And so that got me into the orchestra. And then John Metcalfe had been recommended by Amanda down here, who runs the record label. The Scratch My Back thing came out, and so we started looking at my stuff. And then we started picking out particular songs rather than the sort of hits, but it was songs that might lend themselves to orchestra, whether there's the textures that were being used, or they had a bit of a story, or not regular verse chorus things. And so they began to choose themselves. And then when we took it out on the road, I think people really seemed to respond to that. And I thought, okay, well, let's do it properly. Let's make a record, T-shirt, film, anything else we can flog.
Well, it's a beautiful thing, and I sort of, what was really struck with was, because I knew a lot of the songs really, really well. I mean, I think I knew all of them, but I knew some of them better than others. Rhythm of the Heat, for instance, which opens New Blood. A very big part of that song for me is the percussion at the end, and I wondered how you were going to achieve that with an orchestra. And it's stunning. And I thought, because of the subject matter of that song, I mean, I read today, I didn't know this, but I read today that the song was inspired by Young's experiences in Africa.
Yeah, and you're dead right that for me the drum thing was a key element. It had been a really important part. The song was about this Carl Jung going to Ethiopia and finding this drum group dancing around a fire, and then just getting mesmerized and sort of going into the trance and losing control. And there was a guy not only who influenced Western thought, but lived, in his head, in his dreams, and suddenly he was right in his body and beyond. And so the moment, when the drums come in is obviously the moment when it all happens. And so it was very important. And I asked John if he thought he could take some of the drum patterns that were there, because a lot of them are sort of repetitive and cycling, and build them into orchestral instruments. And he did a brilliant job on it. And for me, that's probably my favourite moment on the record.
It is absolutely amazing. And I was struck, having worked with an orchestra a couple of times myself, and rhythm being the frustrating thing a lot of the time playing with an orchestra, it's how incredibly tight it is. It must have been a very challenging play for the orchestra.
Yeah, so I'm losing signal a bit here. It's intermittent, and I've lost picture.
Have you?
I mean, you're still there, but you're frozen.
Oh.
In a beautiful way. But,
you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Getting you nicely alive again. Yeah, no, because you brought up an interesting point there, because the one thing that's really hard for an orchestra to do is get funky, and we had, say, with a song like "Digging in the Dirt," it took 2 or 3 goes before we got the right arrangement or the right feel out of the playing, and whereas there's a whole range of other colours, I think it is quite hard to nail the grooves, you know. And the other thing I found weird too was following the conductor, because, you know, in my music you always used to, like, the beat is the beat, but the conductor, as you would know now, and I certainly didn't, is always ahead of the beat, and I found that really weird.
Did you look at the conductor then, or did you just vibe off the orchestra?
I had 3 screens to cheat from. One was words in case I had a senior moment, 2 was the conductor, and 3 was the we have our colour bar system for marking out the songs, which is every intro is yellow, every verse is green, every chorus is red, etc., etc. So it's a sort of a guy who was never very quick at reading music's guide to where we are in the score.
I bet you never used them either once you've got those safeguards in place, did you?
Well, no, I do actually. I tell you where sometimes for the entry points, and in fact occasionally, you know, there was a couple of times when I would be listening to my daughter who was singing with me, and I'd, you know, be a proud dad, and I'd completely forget to come in myself, or and but what was interesting also is that our little colour chart system, when we moved it, I was trying to clear the stage at one point, so we moved it down to a lower level, and some of the orchestra players said, no, don't do that, we've been using that, and they
really?
stopped looking at the notes and they were looking at the colour bars instead. So it was interesting, and I think that, you know, everybody learned to do things a little differently. Did you have that experience as well?
Well, we had very little time, both times that we played with orchestras. The first one was the BBC Concert Orchestra, and Nick Ingman did some. Well, he arranged the whole of our album, Selma Seen Kid.
Brilliant.
And it was one rehearsal and then the performance.
Wow.
So it was pretty seat of the pants stuff. The other thing being that because it was being recorded for television, we had a 15-minute margin of error, and after that they weren't going to pay for the orchestra to be there any longer. So we had one shot at the whole record, really, and it was kind of like riding a unicycle on a tightrope.
Right.
Utterly exhilarating, yeah, but terrifying.
With a very expensive fall.
Yeah, yes, exactly, yeah. The next time we did it was with Manchester's Halle Orchestra.
Yeah, I remember
it was beautiful. That was great. We had several rehearsals, and then we had 2 performances, and I never thought I'd get comfortable in that sort of I've only ever really played with elbow, so I never really thought I'd get comfortable. But I found it when we did lots of songs from our back catalogue with the Halle, I found myself re-examining songs in a way that I hadn't done since perhaps we'd recorded them. And I was struck while I was listening to New Blood this morning, the line in Digging in the Dirt, you know, the refrain, I find the places I got hurt, open up the places I got hurt. And I suddenly had a thought, and was it, in revisiting the songs, did you find yourself thinking about the time when they were written? Was it sort of an emotional journey for you in any way? I know everybody's having an emotional journey these days.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Was it strange to revisit them?
Yeah, no, it was, and in fact, on that one particularly, the chords that John had changed in the chorus, the old melody didn't work, so I tried changing the melody a little bit, and actually got to like it, and felt. And what I particularly liked about it, which I'd always wanted in the band version, was it went from this sort of driving verse to this sort of very sad, reflective, introverted moment, which is really what the lyric was always trying to do, and it did that job better. And I don't know, you know, from your Halle night, if you, or nights, I found I was more exposed quite often as a singer.
Yeah.
It was emptier.
Yeah, no, I did find that quite a lot of the time, and as well with them, when we did it with the Halle, I was mic'd up to a degree, but it's an acoustically designed room in there.
Right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The sort of, when it's stripped back and the familiar sounds aren't there, then you sort of end up readdressing the things. We have an awful lot of love songs to Manchester.
Right.
So the Halle Orchestra thing involved the town hall clock as part of the song. So yes, I was very, very, very much in the meaning of a lot of the songs.
Yeah.
But this is your work spanning so long. Was there anything? How do we put this? I found myself surprised at some of the things I'd written when we went back to them.
Yeah.
And wondering if I'd write them that way now. Was there anything going back that what possessed me?
Yeah, I think I get more critical as I get older, I think, particularly with lyrics, and you think, oh, I wouldn't get away with that now. And so I think I was trying to look for things that I felt comfortable still singing. And that was interesting because when I was choosing songs and other people's songs and my own, I was still very open about musical choices, but much more picky about lyrics.
I mean, in terms of how you've made music, I mean, I am, as I say, an old school fan, so this is definitely a record for me. But when I've been at Real World, when I've been writing lyrics for Elbow, or if I've been there for any reason, I've of course had a nosy at your writing room and things like that. Learned a lot about the way you work. And from remixing songs for you once or twice, from doing B-sides for you, I've had access to your raw tracks before you've mixed anything, and I know that exploration and experimentation are a big part of what you do.
Yeah.
I know that it's a very exploratory way of working. It's very impulsive. There's lots of experiments.
There's lots of crap.
In those terms, when working with John on the arrangements for these songs, there couldn't be a more sort of well-trodden path in terms of experimentation. The limitations, I know this sounds strange, but the limitations of working with an orchestra, using those traditional sounds, is it something that you're going to take to your next project? Did you learn anything that you're going to want to use again?
I was thinking that because I think I want to try doing something, although, I've got some things cooking in the can, but I may, deal with them first, but I'd like to try something that's more sort of electronic and rhythmic, was sort of the opposite of what I have been doing with orchestra. But once you've been made really aware of what those instruments can do, then I think it's always going to be in the back of my head now. I guess it's over 2 years it's imprinted itself in my head.
You see, that's something to remember. See, you've been working with orchestra for 2 years.
It was going to be 3 months originally, but I'm never very quick.
The sound of the record's astonishing. It really is great.
We went out trying not to sound like a lot of Hollywood films where the strings are so bright and abrasive they scrape your eardrums out, and I don't like the sort of full frontal attack you get on a lot of soundtracks. This was quite a sort of retro approach in a way of trying to get instruments to sound like warm and like bits of wood and whatever it is that they were originally.
Yeah, there's a richness and a fullness and a warmth in loads and loads of your recordings, which I was really interested to hear that has continued into the orchestral. So, I mean, obviously an orchestra's going to sound rich and warm, but there's a beautiful depth of spirit to the way that your music's always recorded, and it comes across on this album. I think what I mean to say is it doesn't sound out of place as a Peter Gabriel record at all.
Great. Okay, well that's a nice thing to say.
Well, it's a great record, Peter, and it's a pleasure speaking to you as always.
Yeah, and to you, Guy.
I hope I can have a cup of tea with you again soon.
All right.
And give my love to everyone at Real World.
All right, I will. And I'm sure they'd all send it to you too. But thanks for this anyway.
Cheers, Peter.
All
Good
right.
to speak to you.
Cheers, Guy.
Bye, mate.
Cheers.